The doctor didn't look me in the eye when he said it. "Caleb, you've been sterile for years." Everything stopped, like the air itself forgot how to move. The lights in that Bellevue clinic buzzed above me, white and merciless, the kind of brightness that makes lies run out of places to hide. Lauren, my wife, had just walked out. Her perfume still lingered, sweet and sharp, guilt wrapped in silk. Dr. Mitchell turned another page of my chart, hoping the letters might rewrite themselves. They didn't. My hands didn't shake, my heart didn't race. It just stopped believing. Because 6 months ago, my wife gave birth to a son. That was the moment everything cracked. If you've ever felt truth hit harder than a bullet, stay with me, subscribe, and follow the silence that came after. I didn't react. I stared at the paper until the letters turned into scaffolding, straight lines, no mercy, built to hold weight I couldn't carry. My breath sat heavy. The mind does what it must, so it pulled me backward. A hotel ballroom, string lights like constellations you could touch. A slow song. I heard Lauren's laugh before I saw her, bright, easy, the kind that turned heads without trying. She stood at the bar, red wine catching the light, rippling like a signal. I said something plain. She answered with a look that felt like a promise. We fit fast. I liked quiet lines and clean corners. She was color I didn't know I needed. We built routines like a house that would never creak. Dinners on time, weekends mapped, a future measured to the inch. I believed in enough. I believed in her. The clinic lights hummed. The page didn't move. Neither did I. I leaned close, voice low, as if saying it softer could unmake it. When you said forever, I believed you. I folded the report once, slid it back into the file. The room stayed cold, like a bridge in winter, soundless, waiting to crack. I told myself the only rule that made sense now: watch, don't speak, not yet. The first knock was coming. The signs didn't kick in the door. They tapped until the hinges loosened. Her phone started living face down on the counter. Trips to San Francisco stretched. Big campaign became a season. At night, blue light leaked under the bedroom door. Her shoulders curved toward the screen. A private smile I wasn't invited to know. I told myself not to be that guy. Don't hunt shadows. Trust the plan. Build the day. Move on. Seattle rain did its job, blurring the windows, hushing the house, making even doubt sound far away. One night, the rain failed me. She set her phone by the sink and went to lock the back door. A preview lit the glass for half a breath. Most nights, I would have looked away. I didn't. 2 words, 1 initial, neat as a receipt. Good night, D. The floor tilted a degree. Not enough to fall. Enough to know gravity had changed. Lauren stepped back in, smile steady. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, flat as the counter. I rinsed a glass I didn't need, buying seconds. D, a single letter, a loaded chamber. I put the glass down and listened to the rain return, louder than before. Tomorrow, I would hold my son, and I would feel exactly what the truth might take from me. Mason fell asleep against my chest, warm and heavy, the sweet sour smell of milk seeping into my shirt. His breath came in small, even tides. I watched the soft rise and fall and told myself to memorize it. The weight, the quiet, the way his fist still curled like he was holding on to something only he could see. Down the hall, Lauren turned late in the bed. The keys on her laptop clicked in short, careful bursts, the sound of a conversation that didn't want to witness. "Early flight tomorrow," she called, not loud, not soft. A statement, not an invitation. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady enough to pass for normal. I laid Mason down and tucked the blanket to his chin. The house felt over-insulated, like a room built to keep doubt from circulating. On the dresser, the black TV screen held the room in miniature. I caught my reflection there, jaw set, eyes too awake. I could have asked a dozen questions I'd already rehearsed. I could have turned on the light and let the truth start burning right then. I didn't. The rules had changed. Talking would only scatter the pieces. Watching would keep the edges sharp. Her typing stopped. A door closed somewhere in the night. I stood in the doorway a long minute listening to a house that suddenly had 2 heartbeats. The screen threw my stare back at me, flat and sleepless. the first crack, and now the waiting. Before sunrise, the house held its breath. I moved through the kitchen like I knew where every creak lived. The bottle rack by the sink still held one old piece we never tossed. I found it by feel, cloudy plastic, faint scent of formula even after a dozen washes. I slipped it into a zip bag, then into my backpack, the way a man pockets a truth he's not ready to say out loud. My phone lit the counter. I scrolled to Ryan. We hadn't had a beer in months. "Need a favor," I said when he picked up. No questions. On the other end, a pause long enough to measure loyalty. "Bring what you have," he said. "I'll run it." I added a pacifier from the drawer and a few hairs from a brush I knew she'd left on purpose. Evidence of a life we told ourselves was simple. The coffee maker hissed. I didn't pour any. My hands were steady, steadier than they'd been in years. I left a note for no one. Just the sound of keys lifting off a hook, the way you lift a weight you've finally decided to carry. In the garage, cold air knifed through the seams. I slid into the truck, checked the bag once, checked it again. The remote clicked. The door started down, slats folding into each other, metal on metal. When it thudded shut, it sounded exactly like a lock turned from the outside. The living room held its breath. The wedding photo on the wall hung a little crooked, like a sentence cut off mid-word. I fixed it without thinking, the way you fix a line that's out of square. Then I stood back and took in the house I designed. Oak floors, warm light, clean sight lines from entry to kitchen. Everything set to ratio and rhythm. A life built to hold weight, until it didn't. I walked the perimeter like a man checking load-bearing walls. The couch we chose after 3 stores, the rug measured to the inch, the stairs I'd sanded step by step until the grain lay quiet. Order everywhere. And in the center of it, a silence I didn't recognize. A mirror by the hallway caught me at an angle I didn't expect. Jaw tight, shoulders pulled forward, eyes older than last year's paint. I could name every finish in this place, every joint and joist, but not the point where we shifted from honest to easy. Maybe it wasn't a moment. Maybe it was creep, millimeter by millimeter, day by day. I pressed my palm to the wall. Cool plaster. No give. My voice came out low, to no one at all. Somewhere along the way, I forgot myself. The words didn't echo. They just settled, like dust after a cut. I stood there until the house felt steady again. Or I did. My phone buzzed once on the console. Not a call. A text. I didn't check it. Not yet. I wanted to hear the quiet crack. Ryan texted first. Got the 3 samples. Short. Workmanlike. It fit him. I set the phone face down and listened to the rain tick the roof. A slow metronome for a day that wouldn't hurry. The truck sat in the driveway, beaded with water. I slid behind the wheel and let the engine idle, windows fogging at the corners like a breath you can't quite catch. I killed time at a diner on the corner. Men my age filled a booth, laughing hard at something ordinary, a bad back, a worse golf swing. Their voices were big, easy, full of a world that still made sense. I watched from the edge and stirred coffee I didn't need. Outside, the streetlights smeared across puddles. Inside, the news murmured about markets and weather, the banal drum of a country moving forward. I opened my laptop, checked invoices, approved a change order on a project that would stand long after this. My hands were steady. My head wasn't. It felt like holding a beam by yourself and smiling so no one sees the strain. The phone buzzed again. Not Ryan. A client. Then Lauren. A photo of Mason with syrup on his chin. I almost smiled. Almost. I put the phone down and looked at my reflection in the window. Me layered over a wet street, the diner neon floating in my chest like a warning light. On the surface, it's a life. Underneath, a drop. Ryan's name lit the screen. Call coming in. I let it ring once, then I answered. Lauren texted me a link. Vasectomy info. Blue and neat on the screen. For peace of mind, she wrote. Just to be safe. I typed back. Sure. No emojis, no questions. My pulse stayed level, like a steady line on a monitor that refuses to spike for anyone. I scrolled the clinic page. Bullet points about recovery, a photo of a calm man in a gray hoodie, the promise of control in a world that keeps slipping. I picked a date, picked a time, entered my insurance. The calendar closed with a soft click, like a drawer that hides sharper things. It felt backward and perfectly right at the same time. A procedure to prevent what I already couldn't do. A lock on a door that had never opened. Sometimes the only way through a lie is to walk it all the way to the end. I set the phone down and looked around the room we built. The counter we argued over, the chairs we finally agreed on, the bowl of fruit we bought when we were trying to be better. Everything in place, like a clean drawing pinned to a wall. No smudges, no fingerprints. "Friday?" Lauren texted. "Friday," I answered. I didn't feel brave. I felt exact, like signing a verdict with a pen that doesn't run. I added the appointment to my calendar and watched the square turn blue. It looked like any other meeting. It wasn't. Ryan texted, "Results tomorrow." Professional. Bare. Like a lab coat sentence with no extra words. I read it twice, muted the thread, and left the bedroom light off when I passed the door. Lauren was already asleep or pretending to be, the shape of her shoulder a clean, quiet hill under the duvet. I kept walking. In the kitchen, the fridge hummed its old, steady note. I sat at the table without turning on a lamp. Streetlight poured through the blinds in thin ladders. My hand found the scratch on the wood, one long, pale line from a night we were rushing, keys skidding where they shouldn't have. I traced it, slow. It felt like a map of something breaking over time. Not a snap, a creep. I made a glass of water and didn't drink it. I stared at the sink until it turned into some other kind of silence. The house carried the soft sounds of a life. A heater kicking on, a branch brushing the siding, a neighbor's car leaving too late for anything good. My phone lay face down on the table. I didn't pick it up. I wanted to sit in the shift and feel what didn't fit anymore. When you're building, you learn to hear strain before it shouts. Tonight, I heard it everywhere. Corners, joints, breath. The screen lit the wood from underneath. One vibration, then another. I flipped it over. "Call me when you can." Ryan didn't dress it up. "Caleb, Mason doesn't match." For a second, I thought the rain got louder. Maybe it just found me. I stood by the kitchen window and watched water hit the glass in straight, fast lines. I didn't ask how sure he was. I didn't ask for numbers, charts, margins of error. I knew Ryan. He didn't call unless the floor was solid. "Thanks," I said. Silence on both ends. Two men who understood that more words wouldn't make it cleaner. I ended the call and set the phone down like it might bruise the table. The fridge hummed, steady as ever. A car passed. Somewhere a dog barked and gave up. I felt something inside let go the way a tight knot finally slips under your thumb. I didn't punch a wall, didn't sink to the floor. My hands were still, like they'd been waiting for this exact job. I breathed in, slow, through my nose, out through my mouth. The air tasted like metal. Freedom sometimes does. I looked at the empty hallway and smiled. Small, private, gone in a blink. A smile not for winning, not for revenge. For the end of a lie I'd been carrying like a beam with no help. In the dark reflection of the window, a man stood where I stood, jaw hard, eyes calm. He looked like me and a version of me I hadn't met yet. I picked up the phone again, not to call, but to count. One step, then the next. The line had snapped. Now came the pull. I called the clinic when they opened. "I need a notarized copy of my sterility report," I said. No preface, no apology. A pause. Paper shuffling. "Let me put you through to Dr. Mitchell." He came on with the voice people use when the truth is heavier than they'd like to lift. "Caleb, are you sure you want that on record?" "I need it for files," I said. The catch in the middle of the sentence wasn't fear. It was precision, the language of men who have decided. He hesitated long enough for me to hear the office, the muted printer, a cough, the soft grind of a chair. "All right," he said. "Come by. I'll have it ready." At the desk, no small talk. He slid the pages across. My name, the dates, the word that wouldn't change no matter who looked at it. The notary stamped the corner, red and clean. I watched the seal bloom under pressure, then lift. The ink sat wet, dark as a fresh bruise. "Give it a minute," the notary said, so I counted. 10, 15, 20. The wet turned matte. The red hardened into something that didn't care about feelings. The room smelled like paper and sanitizer. I liked that about it, how simple it was to prove a fact when nobody ran from it. I slid the report into a manila envelope and felt the weight settle, real and exact. Dr. Mitchell met my eyes. "I'm sorry you had to hear it this way." "I'm not," I said. "Not anymore." Outside, the sky was low and gray, the kind that keeps you honest. I set the envelope on the passenger seat, buckled nothing but still felt safer. The next call would change money, then rooms. The clock in my head started counting down. I moved money the way you move weight off a failing beam, slow, measured, no noise. I logged into the joint account and slid half to my name, then slid more. Not to punish, to prepare. I left enough for her to live a few months without panic. Panic makes people sloppy. I needed her calm. Then I called a lawyer a friend had used. No referral, no story. "Irreconcilable differences," I said when asked for grounds. The phrase felt clean, like a cut made with a sharp blade. No talk of Mason, no mention of clinic rooms or dates stamped in red. The fewer facts I fed this, the straighter it would travel. Information is a tool. Used right, it builds. Used wrong, it explodes. We went over the basics: assets, timelines, signatures that take longer than vows. He asked if I wanted to file today. I said, "Draft it. I'll sign when I'm ready." A pause, then paper noise, then the voice of a man who's heard every version of the same story. "You're choosing a silent war," he said. "I'm choosing the only fight I can win," I answered. He told me what to expect. I wrote it all down, even the parts I wouldn't need. When we hung up, the house was still. I put the notebook in the drawer beside the spare keys and the extra batteries. The envelope sat on the counter, heavy as a new rule. I washed my hands, fixed my face. The clock on the stove ticked forward. Tonight, I'd set the table. We ate like a family that still believed in eye contact. Mason told me about a Roblox maze he'd built. Lava floors, hidden doors, a boss that never looked where you expected. I smiled where a dad should smile. Asked the questions a dad asks. Lauren touched my wrist the way old habits do, light and familiar, like nothing had shifted under our feet. "Friday, right?" she said. "Yeah," I said. "The clinic." I got up for the bottle and poured her a glass first. The wine caught the light and climbed the bowl, slow as a thought you don't want to name. She watched me over the rim, searching for static in a voice that stayed clear. I handed her the glass and filled my own. The house hummed with those small, domestic sounds, forks against plates, Mason humming nonsense, the dishwasher door not closing the first time. We raised our glasses. Habit again. The tap of glass on glass landed too hard in my chest. It sounded like a gavel. One clean strike, case called, no appeal. Her smile held. Mine did too. Mason asked if he could show me the maze after dinner. "Sure," I said. "I've got time." Lauren's phone lit, face down, and went dark. She didn't reach for it. Neither did I. We ate like people who knew how to finish a meal. When the plates were cleared, I walked Mason to the living room. He booted up the game, excited breath fogging the screen for a second. Behind us, her chair scraped back. A small sound, sharp as a thought. Later, when the house went soft and Mason's game sounds faded to a hum, I opened my phone and scrolled the old life. Vacations, dinners, birthdays lined up like a showroom. Clean, staged, no dust. I landed on Napa. Sunlight in late afternoon, a fence line running off into gold. Lauren's head on my shoulder, her smile unposed for once. You can fool strangers. Cameras remember. I pinched to zoom and the world narrowed to the corner of the screen. Just enough room for a notification bar I hadn't noticed before. A preview lived there, quiet as a stain. Miss you, D. No exclamation, no heart. A sentence that knew it didn't need help. The phone slid in my hand and dropped onto the couch. Not a crash. A soft, final sound, like something choosing where to rest. I picked it up and looked again, making sure my eyes weren't just tired. They weren't. There's a way an architect removes what doesn't belong. Not with anger, with a blade that's sharp and a plan. I held my thumb on the photo until the options rose like an elevator menu. Share, edit, delete. I chose the last one. Napa vanished. The file name blinked out, a square of light gone dark. I didn't go hunting for more. Not yet. I sat with the hole where that day used to be and felt how clean the cut could make the room. Outside, rain touched the windows and slid down in straight lines. Some things don't need witnesses. They need removal. The next evening, she walked in late, talking about a new pitch like it was a rescue. Budgets, deadlines, stakeholders, the safe language people use when the real story is impolite. I listened, hands flat on the table, the way you test for a vibration in a wall. "Is Daniel on it?" I asked. There it was, a half-second catch. A breath misfired. Her eyes flicked right, then back, like she'd checked a window only she could see. She smoothed her sleeve. The gesture didn't need smoothing. "No," she said. "He switched teams." I nodded once, as if I'd asked about the weather. The room didn't move, but something in it changed shape. You can frame a lie straight and it still hangs crooked. She poured water, careful not to spill. The glass touched the counter too gently. Her voice found a brightness that didn't reach her face. "It's a good opportunity," she said. "I might fly down next week." "San Francisco," I said. "Yeah." The dishwasher clicked behind us like a metronome. I watched the line of her throat as she swallowed. Small, controlled, a tell not meant for me anymore. "Okay," I said. The words sat between us, light as lint, heavy as lead. She put the glass down and met my eyes for the longest 2 beats of the week. Nothing new passed between us, and everything did. I stacked our plates, turned toward the sink, and felt the plan lock into place. Quiet, exact, already moving. Tomorrow, the silence would start doing the talking. I took the long way home, the route that forces you over water. The bridge sat low and straight, a clean line across black. The radio bled a segment on men's mental health, statistics, hotlines, the careful voices people use when they're talking near pain. I shut it off. I wanted wind, not words. The truck hummed steady, tires thudding seams I'd memorized years ago. Seattle threw its reflection under me, skyscrapers and cranes, a city I once built on a screen piece by piece until the model clicked. Out here, everything held scale. Lanes, guardrails, grids. Everything made sense except us. I rolled the window down an inch. Cold air cut through, clean as iodine. I thought about how some structures fail all at once and others go quietly, load shifting millimeter by millimeter until one day the numbers don't add up. We were the second kind. That's the hard truth. Quiet collapses look like nothing until you're standing in the dust. There's a kind of mercy in silence. It doesn't humiliate. It doesn't feed the fire. It lets the truth stand by itself, without my hands on its throat. I could haul this into the light and break her publicly. I could. But there's a better sentence. I gripped the wheel until my fingers went pale and said it out loud, to no one. I won't scream. I won't explain. I won't rescue. My silence will be the last thing she hears. On the kitchen table, I set out what the future would need. The notarized report. The DNA printout with clean columns and numbers that didn't care about stories. The appointment confirmation for Friday, blue square on a calendar that now felt like a courtroom. I slid the pages into 2 manila envelopes, one with my lawyer's name, one with hers. No notes, no speeches, just names in black ink, centered like a verdict. I pressed each flap down and ran my thumb along the glue, slow, the way you check a seam. I added a copy of the mortgage, a list of accounts, the key to the storage unit I'd rented under a different email. I took the ring of house keys off my carabiner and left the spare in the drawer. The briefcase clicked when I closed it, a small, decisive sound. I locked it, then tested the lock, then tested it again. Habit, or faith in hardware when people fail. The house kept its regular noises, heater cycling, a pipe settling, the refrigerator easing into another hour. I wrote the lawyer a time. I wrote Lauren a time. Different buildings, same morning. I placed her envelope where she would find it if she came looking for comfort. Second drawer, beneath the warranties and manuals, the graveyard of things we keep for just in case. I exhaled until my chest felt empty and useful. Tomorrow. Morning came on quiet feet. I cracked eggs, toasted bread, moved around the kitchen like muscle memory was running the show. Lauren walked in with sleep lines still faint on her cheek, smiling like the world had kept all its promises overnight. I slid a plate toward her, steam lifting in small curls. She laughed at something on her phone, the easy kind that used to land soft. 10 o'clock at the clinic, I said. My voice didn't ask. It placed a marker on the map. Perfect, she answered, reaching for the lipstick she saves for important days. Red, bolder than usual. She leaned into the mirror on the pantry door and drew a careful line. The color flashed against the morning light, bright, decisive, like a flag on a hill. She crossed the room. Her perfume changed temperature halfway over, started sweet, turned sharp, a high note at the top of my nose. I didn't flinch. I just filed it away. Something in this house is about to shift. She touched my shoulder with 2 fingers. Thanks for breakfast, she said, too even. I watched the way she cut her toast. I watched the way her eyes didn't hold when I looked back. No judgment, just measurements. The clock on the stove flipped from 9:12 to 9:13 and felt louder than it should. I cleared the plates, ran water over crumbs until they disappeared, and gave the counter a clean last pass. The air tasted metallic under the coffee steam. Her perfume hung heavier than the heat. Storm warning. Before we left, I stood in Mason's doorway and let the quiet take a knee. He was starfished across the sheets, hair going a dozen directions, a foot out from under the blanket like he'd outrun something in a dream. I stepped closer and let my hand hover, then land, light on his head, soft, warmer than the room. I pulled it back a second later, like the touch cost more than I had to spend. Sleep, buddy, I said. Not loud, not soft. Words meant for one set of ears that wouldn't hear them. I kissed his forehead because there are things you do whether or not the world lines up the way you hoped. The kiss felt like closing a book I wasn't done with. I tucked the blanket back over his leg and watched his face settle from almost up to deep down out again. It hit me then. What truth tries to take from you first isn't pride. It's tenderness. In the hall, the house looked the same as every other morning. Same paint, same light. I closed his door with the care of a man putting a glass crown back on a shelf. The latch caught without a sound. My chest tightened and held. Love is supposed to be a shelter. Today it felt like a blade I refused to point the wrong way. At the front closet, I took my coat. She took hers. We met at the threshold, 2 steady people with different kinds of quiet. I locked the door behind us and kept the key in my pocket like a promise I couldn't keep much longer. The waiting room was too bright, the kind of light that erases shadows and leaves people exposed. Lauren crossed her legs and gave me a small smile, the practiced kind you wear to medical appointments and awkward dinners. A TV in the corner pushed soft music and softer headlines. I watched the second hand on the wall clock eat its way around the dial. 10 o'clock almost had a taste. Monroe? The receptionist called. Clipboard under her arm, stack of envelopes in one hand. She looked between us and made a choice that wasn't hers to make. She handed Lauren an envelope with my name on it. My name. Neat, centered, undeniable. Thanks, Lauren said, casual, like we were picking up dry cleaning. She rested the envelope on her knee and thumbed the flap. Red lipstick perfect, nails clean, everything composed. I didn't move. I didn't correct. I let the room arrange itself around a mistake that wasn't a mistake at all. The TV kept murmuring, a soundtrack for people with smaller problems. The clock ticked, steady as a pulse that refused to panic. Lauren slid a finger under the glue and peeled the flap back, slow, careful, like she didn't want to tear whatever was inside. The receptionist smiled at someone else. A printer woke up behind the desk, a chair squeaked, and then the sounds fell away on their own, one by one, like birds lifting off a wire. No music now, just paper breathing in her hands. She skimmed the header like it would be boring. Name, ID, date. Her eyes tapped the first bold line, sterility confirmed, and widened without permission, then narrowed, trying to pull the word into a shape that worked. It didn't. She blinked twice fast, a reflex that used to clear fog. The fog stayed. She moved down the page, lips working soundlessly, until the date rose in front of her like a wall she hadn't seen. 7 years prior. The number didn't argue. It just stood there and made everything else small. Her mouth opened a fraction, lipstick too bright against skin that had lost its color. She read the sentence again, then a third time, as if repetition could unmake arithmetic. Her fingers loosened. The envelope sagged. One corner of the report slipped forward a few inches, caught at the knee, held on a heartbeat longer than it should have. She tried to breathe around it. The air refused to cooperate. I watched the flares go out behind her eyes, one after another, leaving a dark that had no edges. The receptionist glanced over, sensing a weather change she couldn't name, then looked away. People do that when the truth walks in. Lauren's hand finally quit. The page slid free and fell. It didn't flutter. It dropped with weight, flat and hard, like sheet metal finding the floor. The room didn't gasp. I didn't either. The sound the paper made was enough. She looked at me then, truly looked, like a swimmer who just realized how deep the water is. "Caleb, this is wrong, right?" Her voice skidded across the tile like a shoe that couldn't find traction. She held the report as if heat might change the ink. I tilted my head. "That's the question I asked too." Her hand found my sleeve and held, not hard, but with the need of someone trying to stop a moving train. I eased free. No jerk, no scene, just the quiet reclaiming of fabric. She blinked, once, twice, as if clearing smoke. Around us, the clinic kept pretending to be ordinary. Printers, muted steps, a cough from the hallway. None of it reached the space between us. She tried again. Maybe it's... Words broke in her mouth and fell out wrong. Her lipstick, perfect 5 minutes ago, had started to crack at the center. She swallowed. The paper trembled, a small vibration that said more than the room could hold. I met her eyes and stayed there. No rescue, no rage. Two people who used to share a life looking through the glass at what it really was. Her pupils widened, then shrank, like a camera trying to find light that wasn't coming. I didn't move. Neither did she. Truth doesn't argue. It stands still and makes you do the work. She opened her mouth again, softer now, the plea shrinking as it formed. I steadied my breath and let the silence do the talking. When our eyes finally locked, we both heard it. The end, arriving without a speech. "Mason, what are we..." The name broke her, clean through the middle. She reached for a story that could survive the date on the page. "Read the highlighted section," I said. No edge, just direction. She looked down. The yellow strip waited, patient as a judge. Her finger traced the line as if touch could bend math. She read it once, twice. The third time, the sound left her completely. The clinic's air conditioner took over, a pale hiss filling the space where her voice should have lived. I turned toward the door. It slid open on a motion sensor, polite as a bellman. Cold air pushed in from the hallway, shaving the room a few degrees cleaner. My feet felt heavier and lighter at the same time, like stepping off a job site you know you'll never return to. Behind me, paper shifted, a small, frantic rustle, the sound of someone looking for exits on a wall with none. I stepped forward. The reception desk clicked a keyboard. A printer coughed. Every little noise stood out, bright and pointless. "Caleb," she called, and the word cut in the air like a rope under a blade. I didn't turn. The name kept going without me, thinning to nothing. That's what truth does. It takes the volume out of certain words. I walked into the corridor, the lights colder there, the floor cleaner. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I didn't check it. Behind me, the door eased itself closed, slow and soft, like a hand laying down a verdict. I didn't look back. The door side closed behind me, rubber on glass, a clinic ending a scene it didn't care about. Outside, the sun was too bright for the kind of day we just had. I slid on sunglasses and the world snapped into a cooler version of itself. Parking lot lines white and ruthless, cars blinking in neat rows. A dad pushed a stroller across the crosswalk, coffee balanced on the handle, talking about naps. A nurse in scrubs laughed into her phone. Somewhere a leaf blower droned like a distant argument that would never finish. I stood still long enough to feel ordinary air doing ordinary work. Lungs fill, lungs empty. A bus sighed, doors open, doors shut, the big machine swallowing and releasing lives that had schedules to keep. My reflection glanced back from a minivan window, a man in a dark jacket, hands quiet, face untaxed by public grief. I didn't feel noble, I felt precise. The phone buzzed in my pocket. I let it buzz. Across the street, a barista slid a cup across the counter. A a name in black marker looping into a heart. The light changed and the world kept moving. Green, yellow, red, none of it for me. There's a kind of hurt only the normal can deliver. Sunshine after a verdict, coffee after a funeral, a city that doesn't pause for your collapse. That's the blow that lands the deepest, the ordinary, punching straight through the hole. The phone wouldn't stop. Buzz, buzz, a pocket-sized heartbeat I didn't want to own. Please, talk to me. Then another. We can fix this. The words stacked like sandbags against a flood that had already gone through the town. I walked to the truck and sat without starting it. Screens light up easy. Truth doesn't. I opened the thread and watched little gray paragraphs try to rebuild a house with no frame. Apologies without nouns. Explanations with verbs missing. The kind of language you use when you're begging time to roll back an hour. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. That old reflex, set the record straight, argue the line, meet the chaos with a plan. Instead, I slid down the shade that mattered. Do not disturb. The bell icon cracked to a slash, clean, surgical, a death sentence for a conversation that shouldn't live. I deleted the banner stack until the glass went quiet and black. No confetti, no applause, just a screen that refused to blink first. Outside, a plane carved a clean line across the blue. Inside the cab, I listened to the empty doe what words couldn't. Draw a boundary and hold it. I wasn't punishing her. I was choosing a witness. The engine turned over on the first try. I pulled out slow, checked the mirror, checked it again. The phone buzzed once more, muscle memory from a life that hadn't learned yet. I let it die in my pocket. Silence isn't mercy. It's a door that locks from my side. Rumors don't arrive. They seep. A coworker heard something. A neighbor didn't want to pry. The story found its own legs and walked without my help. I kept my mouth shut and watched the physics work. A lie under pressure, a truth with weight, and the room between them collapsing on schedule. Daniel resigned before anyone asked the right question out loud. The company email was 2 sentences and a link to a cake that never got ordered. His wife filed 2 days later. My lawyer forwarded a public record I hadn't requested. She cited the same phrase I used, irreconcilable differences, a clean blade we both recognized. Friends reached out with soft probes. You good, man? I answered like weather. I'm fine. No details, no art. Silence is a hard language to learn, but once you speak it, you hear it everywhere. In the way doors close, in the way voices lower, in the way a name stops showing up where it used to. I never posted. I never hinted. I never built a case for people who weren't on the jury. The chain snapped at the weakest link and kept snapping. Emails, accounts, calendars rearranging themselves to avoid saying what they meant. All I did was let gravity earn its paycheck. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was level. Floors that stopped creaking. Nights that stopped arguing. I drove past the office one afternoon and didn't slow down. The building looked exactly the same. That's how you know the damage is real. The facade holds. The inside changes. I stayed quiet. The truth did the rest. The lawyer called at 9:07, the time of men who keep calendars for a living. She's acknowledged service, he said. The paperwork tone, neutral, precise, mercy by omission. I thanked him and felt something ease between my shoulder blades, the way a knot might admit defeat. He sent over my stack. I read every line like it could bite, then signed where blue tabs told me to sign. No negotiation, no affidavits built to bruise. No paragraphs meant to humiliate in public so we could feel better in private. We chose a sentence that ends clean and leaves the room. At the courthouse, the clerk scanned barcodes like groceries. 2 signatures, 2 dates, a file number as anonymous as rain. Then the stamp came down, thick rubber meeting ink meeting paper. A low final sound, more felt than heard. The seal bled and held. I watched the wet turn dull, the way heat leaves metal. It felt correct. Anything else you need? The clerk asked. No, I said. That's it. I stepped outside into air that didn't care. A delivery truck double-parked. A cyclist ran a light and lived. People carried lunches back to desks they didn't love. I checked my phone, not for messages, but for time. There's a ritual to ending things well. You close, you confirm, you put away the tools. Back in the truck, the manila envelope rode shotgun like a quiet passenger. No speeches, no victory lap, just a period where a story used to be. But endings don't stay still. Somewhere I knew a phone was already ringing. Bitter relief is still relief. The apartment was small enough to see end to end without moving your feet. I liked that about it. One chair went by the window, one table lamp on a crate, no TV, no pictures. The walls felt honest because they didn't pretend to be anything else. I unpacked a pot and a bowl and a single spoon, then stood for a minute just listening to the hum that new places make before they know you. I boiled water, dropped noodles, watched them soften. Steam fogged the glass. The city outside blurred into a watercolor, headlights sliding past, a bus sighing at the corner, footsteps on the stairs trying not to echo. I added the packet, stirred, and set the bowl on the counter like it mattered. I ate slow. I tasted salt, heat, starch. No wine to chase it, no toast to make it look like a scene from a different life. The room didn't demand conversation. It offered quiet and meant it. The chair held me without judgment. I felt my shoulders come down an inch, then another. I thought about everything I'd left in that house. Things, yes, but mostly the habit of filling space with noise. I rinsed the bowl, set it in the rack, and leaned on the counter, breathing in the kind of silence that doesn't ask for proof. The spoon tapped porcelain once, a clean, small note. Simple freedom has a sound. It's that. Then, 3 soft knocks on the door. Not urgent, just enough to remind me the world still knows my name. Sometime past midnight, my laptop blinked with a new message. Dr. Mitchell. Subject line plain as drywall. Checking in. I opened it and read the single paragraph. I'm sorry for the way you found out. No defense, no sermon. Just the sentence you write when you know the job hurt even though it was the job. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim, then woke it with a fingertip and started typing. Thank you for your honesty. You didn't owe me courage, but you gave it anyway. I watched the words stack. They were true. They were also more than I wanted to carry into the morning. Backspace. All of it. I kept 2 words. Thank you. I hit send and watched the whoosh go nowhere special. The room settled back around me. Lamp a small warm circle, the rest of the apartment a quiet field. I closed the lid and sat with my hands together, palms warm from the keys. Not victory, not grief. Ownership. The kind you feel when you choose what gets said and what gets left unsaid. My phone lit with a notification from a group chat about weekend plans. I let it time out. Outside, a siren rose and faded like someone else's problem moving on. I poured water, drank half, and left the glass beside the sink. Choosing fewer words felt like choosing a spine. I went to bed, and for once the dark didn't argue. Through the window, a light blinked once across the street, too brief to mean anything. Still, I watched it just in case. I met Ryan at a place that still brewed coffee like it mattered. He took the booth side. I sat facing the rain. He asked, "You good?" The way men ask when the answer isn't simple. I said good, in my way, and let the steam fog my glasses for a second. We didn't unload. We didn't solve. We just let the quiet stretch long enough to hold weight. Rain worked the parking lot into a gray sheet. Tires hissed. A delivery guy hustled past with a box on one shoulder, living proof that the world keeps its errands. Ryan set his phone face down. I matched him. We sat there, 2 men who'd butchered plenty of problems with words and finally learned when not to. He said, "You want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "I want to live with it." He nodded like a carpenter testing a joint. No creak, no split. We watched the window until it felt like the weather was inside the glass, not outside it. The waitress refilled our cups without asking. Gratitude felt best unspoken. I told him I appreciated the lab work. He said I didn't owe him anything. That was the whole deal. No one owed back. When we stood to leave, I realized my shoulders were lower than when I came in. Not fixed. Settled. Ryan looked back once. "You sure that's the end?" I didn't answer. Some truths don't fit in a coffee shop. Friendship is a kind of roof. Quiet, wide, there when the rain forgets to stop. A week later, I drove the old route and saw the sign in the lawn. White post, red slash, For sale. The letters looked louder than the house ever did. The yard was trimmed to brochure length. The porch light was on in daylight, a habit that never learned the time. A lockbox hung from the knob like an ankle monitor. I didn't stop. In the rear view, the place shrank pane by pane. The window where Mason watched for the ice cream truck became a small square. The doorway where shoes piled up became a notch. You spend years making scale feel right, then one drive and it all obeys math, distance, angle, vanishing point. The house folded into the mirror like a model I was taking apart. Roof last, then ridge, then air. We had measured that life to the inch. Rugs cut to the room, frames centered, nails tapped and counters sunk. Now the measurements belong to a listing. Square footage, year built, price, reduced. The copy would say things that were true and miss the only line that mattered. Load failed quietly. At a red light, I looked once more. The sign held, sure of itself, as if it had always been there waiting on us. A couple parked and took a slow walk up the path, hands in pockets, heads together, building a future in their mouths. I faced forward and rolled on. A whole life, scaled down, sliding out of frame. I rebuilt my days with small nails. Morning runs along the lake. Nothing heroic, just miles that taught my lungs how to trust me again. I ate on time, I slept on purpose, leapt on. No whiskey at night, no bargains with sleep that I'd lose anyway. I kept a notebook on the counter and wrote 5 lines a day, even on days that felt like drywall. Blank, flat, necessary. What happened? What I felt. What I didn't do. What I won't. The apartment learned me. Shoes by the door, keys in the bowl, the lamp at half bright after 9. I cooked without making a show of it. Eggs, rice, a pan that doesn't complain. I folded laundry while it was still warm, a small mercy I could control. The phone stayed face down unless I had a reason. I answered only what was asked. I asked less of everything. On runs, rain stitched my hat brim and left me alone. I watched the city wake like a time lapse. Garbage trucks, dog walkers, the first bus hissing into a stop. I felt something assemble where the noise had been. Not pride, not even calm, just alignment. Pieces back in rightful places. Breath, step, thought. One morning I passed a shop window and caught myself in the glass, jaw easier, eyes not hunting. A face I recognized from an older life, the kind built before a person needed proof. A smile crossed before I could stop it. Thin, quiet, real. Her text came on a Wednesday at 2:11 when the day was honest and had no reason to hurt me. Mason needs you. 4 words. No decoration. I stared at them until the background blurred and only the letters stayed sharp enough to cut. He does need something. He needs the truth. Not a man drafted into a story that can't carry its own weight. Not a version of me taught to pretend the math works. I could drive over, fix a faucet, fix a mood, fix a weekend. That's what men do. Patch, brace, lift. But this isn't a loose hinge. It's a beam that never belonged. I typed 3 different replies and deleted each. Explanations are scaffolding for people who won't step on the ground. I set the phone down and let the room be what it was. Quiet, squared, ours meaning only me. My thumb hovered over call. Old gravity. I thought about the boy asleep with his foot out of the blanket. About the day that will come when he asks, not why I left, but why I didn't lie. I pictured telling him that silence is a kind of respect when the truth is the only adult in the room. I turned the screen off. The glass went black and showed me back. Refusing the false rescue doesn't make me less of a man. It makes the truth big enough for him to grow inside it. The phone buzzed again. I let it starve. I wrote the letter at the small table by the window, the paper flat and the night clean. Mason, you deserve the truth. I kept it simple. No names, no dates, no courtroom words a kid shouldn't have to learn. I wrote about self-respect, how it's something you keep even when you're tired of holding it, how a man can be strong without being loud, how love without honesty is just a costume. I told him I never wanted him to carry my anger like a backpack that wasn't his size. That silence, sometimes, is the only way to keep a lie from breeding more lies. I promised him that when he was ready to ask, I'd be ready to answer, and I'd use words that belonged to both of us. I signed my name the way I sign plans, steady, no flourish. I dated the corner, folded once, slid the page into an envelope and sealed it with my thumb pressed along the seam until the glue went dull. I wrote, "For Mason, when you're ready on the front." No timeline, no trap. I put the envelope in a small metal box with a key, the kind that holds titles and passports and the few things a man won't lose. The hinge squeaked. Honest metal, honest work. I set the key on my ring and sat there a second, palm on the lid. Then I closed it. The sound was small, final, a promise aimed forward. The email hit mid-morning. New project, mixed use, North Lake. The kind of job with clean edges and money that shows up when it should. I opened the model and the screen filled with lines that answered to math and nothing else. My hands steadied on their own, the way they do when muscle memory remembers the craft before the crowd. I pulled a wall, nudged a column, set a beam. The grid accepted each move without drama. Jazz played low from the speaker, a trumpet keeping its distance. Outside, the rain quit and left the streets rinsed to a darker color. I watched a bus sigh at the corner and pull away like a decision already made. I checked loads, ran spans, chose the simple solution over the clever one. The older I get, the less I worship clever. The room around me felt squared and bright. Lamp, desk, tools exactly where I left them. I thought about the boy, about the letter in the box, about a future that could still stand if we respected the weight it asked us to hold. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt useful. A drawing printed. The paper came out warm, thick with intent. I pinned it with 2 magnets and stepped back. The plan was modest, right? Buildable. So was I, again, on better footings than the last set. You can't rebuild the past. You can build from it. I chose the new work, on the page and under my ribs. I stopped by the clinic to close the loop. No appointment, just a folder and a name that had already done its work. Dr. Mitchell met me in the hallway with that careful look people wear when they've seen you at your worst and you didn't break. We sat for a minute. No rush. He checked a screen, signed a form, clicked a box that moved my file from active to complete. "You're a strong man," he said. I shook my head. I just chose silence. He didn't argue. He knew what that costs. We went over the last pieces, release authorizations, record requests, a note confirming the date I'd needed circled in red. He printed it and let the page cool on the tray. Paper has a way of settling when it knows its job is finished. He slid the copy toward me. "If you ever need anything—" "I won't," I said, and smiled to drain the sting. "But thank you." We stood. No speech, no burden shifted back. He reached out and we shook hands, firm, ordinary, human. It felt like closing a door without slamming it. Medical facts, ethical choices, a hard truth delivered clean. The kind of work that leaves a mark because it should. In the parking lot, the wind cut straight through my jacket. I breathed it anyway. The folder went back under my arm, lighter than when I carried it in. Somewhere a siren wailed and kept going. Cycles end, new ones start. That handshake was the hinge. The envelope had no return address, just my name in neat print that tried too hard to be neutral. I knew the rhythm of those sentences before I unfolded anything. Guilt has a handwriting. I made coffee first and let the kettle click off. Then I slid a finger under the flap and read the first lines. No greeting. A quick claim to responsibility without saying the word. Phrases that dodged weight. Never meant, got complicated, wish I could undo. A man trying to build a bridge out of apologies that don't carry loads. I didn't need the rest. I folded it once, then again. Not in anger, like you put away a tool you don't use anymore. The trash can lid thumped shut. I rinsed the mug, poured, and let the steam rise into a kitchen that had no interest in history. I could have written back. I could have demanded names, dates, receipts. I could have carved him down to the bone and called it justice. But that would put me in the same room as a story I'd already left. Some losses don't require a witness. Some endings don't deserve a stage. I stirred cream into the cup and leaned on the counter, listening to the apartment settle. Pipes, wind, a neighbor's dog choosing to bark at nothing. The world kept its pace. So did I. Freedom isn't winning, it's refusing the game. I took another sip and let the heat do its quiet work. I keep one photo of Mason on the shelf, him in a hoodie 2 sizes too big, grinning like he hasn't learned caution yet. I stood there with my coffee going cool and let the moment take its time. I didn't rehearse a claim. I didn't measure what I'd given or what I'd lost. I just looked at the kid and let the picture be what it is, a good face in decent light. I smiled, thin, easy, not the kind that tries to own anything. Ownership is loud. Love can be quiet. I thought about the letter in the metal box, about the day he'll be old enough to decide which words fit and which ones don't. I don't want him raised on edits. I want him raised on straight lines. Grow up honest, I said under my breath. Stronger than me, kinder than both of us. The room held it without echo. No prayer, no bargain. Just a hope I could stand behind. I set the cup down and traced the frame's edge with a finger, the way you test if something is seated right. He doesn't need me to win arguments for him. He needs the ground under him to tell the truth even when it's hard. I took one last look and put the photo back, exactly where it had been. Be better than us, I said. Soft enough to be mine, strong enough to be his. I switched off the lamp. The dark didn't feel empty. It felt honest. The sky finally broke blue, the rare kind Seattle lets you borrow. I walked the lake path without a stopwatch, hands bare, jacket open. Ducks cut small arrows in the water. A runner passed and nodded the usual nod. I nodded back, the treaty of strangers with decent mornings. I picked up a flat stone, the kind your hand chooses on its own. Cool, smooth, weight just right. I held it a second, then let it go. The splash was quick. The rings climbed out from the point of impact and kept walking the surface, wider, softer, then gone. That's how truth works when you stop fighting it. It moves through everything until there's nothing left to move. I listened for the old noise, counting steps, counting reasons, counting all the ways a day can fail. Nothing. Just wind, a gull with too much to say, and my heartbeat settling into a gear that didn't grind. Across the water, a kid laughed at something small enough to carry. A dog shook off the lake and won the moment. I kept going because forward felt like the only direction that deserved me. No revenge playlist, no speeches to nobody. Just shoreline, breath, and the clean math of distance covered. Silence walked beside me, but it wasn't the kind that freezes. It warmed the edges, left room for air. The world didn't clap, it didn't need to. I looked at the ripples smoothing back to glass and let the quiet fill in the rest. The silence held, and this time, it healed. People think revenge needs fire. It doesn't. It needs a silence deep enough to let the truth stand on its own 2 feet. I didn't ruin anyone. I stopped holding up a lie that was already collapsing. Paper did what paper does. Dates don't flinch. A stamp lands, the ink dries, and a life draws a line. There's no victory parade here, just mornings that start clean, coffee that tastes like coffee again, work that answers to math, not mood. I run, I sleep, I write 5 lines that don't need an audience. The world moves on without checking my pulse, and that's mercy. I kept one promise to the boy: give him ground that won't give way. A letter waits in a locked box, not to weaponize the past, but to teach him the weight of his own name. When he's ready, he'll read it. When I'm asked, I'll answer. No theater, just truth. If you're listening for rage, you won't find it. If you're waiting on a speech, you missed it. There's nothing left to prove, and no one left to convince. What broke, broke. What holds, holds. I chose not to scream. I chose not to explain. I chose to walk out and let the facts keep breathing after I left the room. People think revenge needs fire. It needs what I kept. My silence is the final verdict.